Hi everybody, this is B007 back for another 10 minutes spoiler-free movie review after something of a hiatus, which is typical for me. I usually binge watch movies during the London Film Festival and then take a break. But I'm here to talk to you today about Black Mass, which was released in the US back in October and is out in the UK this weekend. And I think it's a really fantastic film, probably one that's going to win awards. And I think certainly Johnny Depp is touting himself on the awards circuit, trying to drum up a Best Actor nomination. The movie is based on a book written by two journalists from the Boston area and is the tale of Whitey Bulger. And in case you've never heard of him, this is a guy who was a major gangster in South Boston in the 70s and early 80s. And as it turns out, he was also an informant for the FBI. Basically, an old childhood friend called John Connolly, who'd grown up with Whitey Bulger, had recruited him into the FBI to get information on other gangs, the mafia, and terrorist activity. Now, the irony of all this is that basically, from John Connolly's perspective, they had a common enemy who was the mafia. But by using Whitey Bulger's information to get rid of the mafia, what the FBI effectively was doing was leaving open the crime landscape for Whitey Bulger to make a takeover. And naturally, when all this came to light, everyone was hugely embarrassed that, on the one hand, how much information had Whitey Bulger actually given the FBI? And secondly, basically, had the FBI just been colluding with one of the major gangsters of the time? The other thing that's really surreal about this whole story is that Whitey Bulger's brother, William Bulger, was actually, at the time that all this was going on, president of the Massachusetts Senate, so he was like a leading Democratic politician in the area. You get this impression that you have politics, law enforcement, gangs, all in this unholy alliance, which of course gives the book, and now the movie, its name. So the translation of book to screen has been brought about by director Scott Cooper, who, if you remember, there was a movie called Crazy Heart a while ago that won some awards, kind of like a low-budget indie film, and this is quite the opposite. It's an all-star cast, even in minor roles, very glossy, very big budget. Of course, it stars Johnny Depp as Whitey Bulger, who looks really sinister. He's been given these piercing blue contact lenses, which apparently is exactly sort of on point for Whitey Bulger. They've obviously also done some very subtle prosthetic work and given him a receding hairline, and the transformation is really quite fantastic. It also stars Joel Edgerton as the FBI agent John Connolly, and I think he's in a sense almost the more interesting character because this is a guy who's a law enforcement official, obviously drunk on the success of bringing down the mafia, getting very good promotions, wearing flash suits and driving a flash car on the back of all his success in dealing with Bulger. And yet one senses that he thinks of himself as a good guy. He thinks this is, when you come from that part of Boston, this is how you act. Your brothers from another mother, so to say. And he's definitely, I think, also drunk on the allure of being part of Whitey Bulger's circle. So I think that's a very interesting character study. And it reminded me a little bit of American Hustle and the character in that film played by Brad Cooper, where, again, it was a law enforcement official who gets wound up in the glamour of the people he's meant to be chasing and sort of goes through this very weird moral quandary. Benedict Cumberbatch plays the brother, the politician. I think probably slightly miscast. I'm not entirely sure what kind of accent he was meant to be doing, and I admit that the Boston accent's very specific and very difficult, but even to my untrained English ears, that sounded a little bit off. And then you have other actors in minor roles, all of whom are very famous. But effectively, the movie plays as a corrupt police procedural. So we start off with a framing device of Jimmy's former gang giving evidence against him in exchange for immunity. And I think that, in a sense, these are some of the more interesting characters. We have Jesse Plemons, who, if any of you were fans of that TV show Friday Night Lights, as I was, he played a very sort of geeky, goofy school kid, very skinny and very sort of shy. And he's transformed himself, put on a lot of weight for this role, really inhabits the role of this sort of heavyweight gangster. And he's also currently starring in the second season of Fargo on TV, which is my current favourite TV series. And really, I mean, I look for great things for Jesse Plemons. He is really impressing me. But anyway, that's the framing device. We then go back to the initial deal that's done between Connolly and Bulger, and we see how it's played out. And it reminds me a little bit of The Craze insofar as he's seen as this nice guy who is kind to little old ladies and makes sure they get their groceries, but at the same time is orchestrating this escalating violence against the mafia. We then see the story unfold. We meet Whitey Bulger's baby mama, played by Dakota Johnson, famously of 50 Shades of Grey. And she's very good in this role. It's a very small, underwritten part, but it shows that she's got better acting ability than perhaps that film let her show. And we just wind through the motions of, the scam running and then finally being unpicked as people become more and more suspicious. It's over 2 hour running time to this film. I can't say that there weren't parts of that I hoped could be sped up. But overall, I think it's a really fascinating movie and some really fascinating characters. It made me want to rush out and buy the book upon which the film is based, which I always think is a good sign, and delve further into that world. So overall, I think directorially, maybe more workmanlike than brilliant, but containing great performances, Johnny Depp, Jesse Plemons, and definitely worth seeing. I think it's one of those rare gangster films that does not glamorize its central character and actually has some nuance to the people around him. However, if you've seen Black Mass and agree or disagree with my take, please feel free to leave a comment on the blog at b007.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.